Welcome back to the Rheumatoid Solutions podcast. My guest today is Nicki, and she's in the North Island of New Zealand. And aren't we in for a treat? She's going to talk about how after being diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis at 15 years old, she is now asymptomatic as an adult after being through the usual process with rheumatology and with medications and so on. She's going to tell us how she managed to achieve that against the odds and the statistics, and to be able to not just be asymptomatic with such a chronic diagnosis, but also to run a very successful kinesiology business and help others. And so it's a real pleasure to welcome you to the show. How you going?
Hi, good, Clint. Thanks for having me. Good.
Yeah, as I said, I'm really excited. We are in for a treat. Give us the trailer of this little movie that we're about to experience. What's your
little trailer? Okay, so, well, I guess the crutch of it is that I went from my CRP levels when the inflammation and the pain was just out of control, out of this world, from about 100, maybe more, down to what we probably would have seen about 2 months, down to 3. And then I got it down to 1 within about 3 to 4 months. And it's been 1 off and on, pretty much 1 for the rest 5 years since I started your program. So, yeah. So pretty amazing. All thanks to you.
Well, wow. You've obviously invested a ton of energy and time and commitment to this to be able to get those kind of results. So you're going to be a wealth of information and what to do, what not to do. And we're going to explore that in detail. But before we get there, so when I say in the intro, asymptomatic, so you're able to wake up in the morning and not have like 10 steps that hurt as you walk out of bed and reach for the kettle and hurt your hand as you pick up the kettle. None of that?
Oh God, I did that though. I was there. No, I not at all. I mean, I can pretty much now. If I've got some type of pain, I can pinpoint. It's funny, like I've got a food pain and I've got an emotional stress pain. So if my body is like that sharp, kind of like almost like that glass pain, that real horrible glass pain, I know that's a food that I've eaten that my body's not liking. And so I will look back in the last 2 days to kind of go, okay, what was it? And it might have been because I've eaten something a bit naughty, or I've been out and, the wrong oil or something's been cooked with the food. But if I have more of a rolly pain, I call it, which is like more of an inflamed pain, that will, for me, I know there's some emotional stress going on. So I then can identify what's been happening in my life, and then I focus on trying to sort out that emotional stress. So no, but primarily if none of those are on board, then I'm good to go. Yeah.
Now, it's brilliant. I'm glad you gave that insight into different types of pain. We're always looking for that, aren't we, with our bodies?
Yeah.
So, for example, I talk a lot about the difference between synovitis, which is the true rheumatoid arthritis activity that we all think of, versus tendinitis, which is usually initiated by the inflammation that's present from the synovitis. However, it's treated in a completely different way, even though it's at the joint level. And so tendinitis requires a lot of engaged tissue. We have to use that part of the tissue, and that can resolve it. But the synovitis needs a systemic approach. We can't just go and bang that knee out with 20 reps and expect synovitis to go away. So I love it. I love the discerning thoughts there. That comes, I think, with being a kinesiology practitioner. You've got experience in the body at a different education than the rest of us. So we'll talk about that too, and what you've learned from that and helping others. But first, let's explore your backstory a little bit. Diagnosed at 15, sort of an awkward time to get something so horrible. Talk us through that.
Well, I wasn't in any pain at that age, but I had a lump on my foot, which was quite painful. So they initially thought I had bone cancer. So they put me in for surgery. And then after the surgery, they came out to my parents going, good news, it's only arthritis. And so I guess at the time that was good news for them. But, that's when I got my diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis. Yeah, so at 15. So So yeah, I mean, as a teenager, it's a pretty, I think when I initially was, because I wasn't in pain at that time, so I didn't initially have that fear, I guess, because I didn't know what I was in for. So, but it was then I went to see, because I obviously had the disease, I went to see a rheumatologist, and that's kind of where my fear started, because the appointment there was pretty non-inspiring from the get-go, to be fair. The rheumatologist, I remember him walking in and he was all hunched over and he walked with a cane. I remember looking at his hands were so arthritic, and I remember looking at them just going, oh my God, like here's this person, this specialist who I'm meant to be getting help for this disease I've got, and he doesn't seem to have been helping himself. And I remember it was funny because I remember seeing his hands. I used to sit on my hands, like I used to sit flat on them, because at 15 I was like, I don't want my hands to be like that, thinking that would solve it. And I did that for years. But it was in that appointment that the rheumatologist told me, he said, so just know that the only job that you'll ever have will be sitting in a chair behind a desk. That's all you'll be able to do. And I can guarantee you'll be in a wheelchair by the time you're 40. So that was when my fear started. And I was like, what's this man talking about? So yeah, that was my the diagnosis was that. And then he just told me what my future was going to be like. And that was it. And then it was like, okay, off you go. So yeah, very, very non-inspiring.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, now, what did you do from a medication point of view throughout those subsequent years?
Well, at that point, I wasn't put on any medication. I was given anti-inflammatories, and I was just said that was the medication. I was said to take that if I ever felt any pain. Being 15, 16, I would just pop them anyway, because I was just scared in my little mind, thinking, well, I don't want a hands like him. I don't want to look like him. So I'm just going to keep taking the anti-inflammatories now. So I wasn't educated. I wasn't told anything, which I really wish that I was back then. But, we know a lot more now than we did back then, I guess. But then it wasn't until I was around 20, when my pain kind of really set in, I started noticing it. And that's when I was living in New York at the time and living with my aunt in New York. And both my knees were getting quite sore, and I'd had baths and I couldn't get myself out of the bath because they were so swollen. So I used to call out to my aunt to come and help me out of the bath. Needless to say, I stopped having baths at her house after that for a while. But that was when I went and saw a specialist in New York, a rheumatologist in New York, and that's when they put me on methotrexate. So, so that's when that started. Yeah.
How did you respond to methotrexate? Nisha Manic, rheumatologist, says, up to 40% of people don't respond to methotrexate. And so, I mean, how were you?
Well, initially, I didn't notice any difference within my pain or within the activity of the rheumatoid. I mean, I was on it for many years, and I still ended up having a full knee replacement, which I had 11 years ago. I've got damage in my joints, so I've got limited rotation and extension in my elbows, and so I still. And this was while I was on the methotrexate, so it didn't help me in any way. Well, I don't feel. I also got the side effects. I used to get headaches and dizziness, and my obviously having to have checks and blood tests for my kidneys, and my kidneys started not functioning properly. So yeah, it was pretty scary. I didn't at all enjoy being on methotrexate. I saw no point to it for me.
Likewise, I was fortunate to get, I would probably guess, at about 60% pain reduction. So I actually got quite a significant amount. But I was at a 10 when I went on, like 10 out of 10 problems. Like couldn't walk. I was like totally just like you described your rheumatologist with my posture and everything without the permanent finger damage. But and so after the methotrexate, I was able to have some improvement, but boy, did the fatigue kick me in the guts. That fatigue was unlike anything I'd ever had. So I always use the phrase a walking zombie. I just was like almost like you're drowning under the fatigue. So that was my unique experience with it. But and so you went through and sort of stayed on that drug for how long? And how'd you come off it?
Yeah, I was probably on it for 4 years, maybe 3 to 4 years. And this is what I wouldn't advocate the other way and the way that I did it. I think because of my experience, well, I know from my experience from the rheumatologist and the medical system, I lost complete faith in them. So, and I saw that I was having this reaction to the methotrexate and that I wasn't feeling any better. In fact, I was starting to feel worse because I was also, I was traveling, I was in London, I was partying, I was doing all these things I shouldn't have been doing to my body. So I wasn't helping it by any means, but I still wasn't sane. I was still getting worried. So I just stopped it myself. So I wish it's one of the things I really wish now looking back that I did have that rheumatologist or find that rheumatologist that was on the same plane as me, who supported me in the way and what I wanted to do with nutrition and things like that. But I just didn't have that awareness then. I didn't even know that existed, So yeah, I would do things differently now. But yeah, as I said, we know a lot more now. So, this is where this education, I think, is so important for people who get this diagnosis to that there are other options to not have that, that future of a wheelchair, I guess.
Absolutely. So you did something similar to me, which was end up coming off the methotrexate without actually having that final sort of handshake at the rheumatology and said, okay, you're on 5 milligram, you might as well stop. Right. Because in my case, I actually forgot to pack it from the US, and then that's how it came about. By the time it actually got sent to me by my mother-in-law after a week after I realized I was meant to take it, where is it? It had been a month or something. And so I thought, well, let's just see what happens. So that's what happened with me. And then so you were living a sort of a mid-20s life in Europe, having fun. And it just sort of fell out of your routine in a way that you thought was convenient at the time. And that's just, this is life. These things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And so have you ever taken another disease-modifying drug or anti-inflammatories? What have you done since your mid-20s?
I was still taking anti-inflammatories. I'd just pop them like candy, like I would have them, I would have a slow release one. So I'd take it at night so then I could function in the morning. And I would have them beside my bed. And I remember there was always that fear that if they weren't there, it was like, oh my God, like, I'd go down to a 24/7 pharmacy to make sure that I had them. And so I was still taking them just to kind of try and function, obviously, but no other medication after the methotrexate. Yeah, just the anti-inflammatories for many years. Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about your knee replacement, just because I've never spoken about this before on another episode, and there's going to be a percentage of people who are either scheduled to get one, thinking about getting one, having had one, or terrified of the whole experience. Let's just spend a few minutes just sharing our experiences with it, because I've had one as well. What happened with me, real quick, just to put this into a framework. My knee was like replaceable back in around 2009, just 3 years after diagnosis, because I tore my ACL the same week I got diagnosed with RA. The ACL added a tremendous amount of additional trauma to the knee. So it would not heal properly, or would not, it was just an inflammation, sort of a magnet. And I just couldn't exercise it sufficiently to get range of motion. I was doing Bikram yoga just to walk every day. It was a nightmare. And then I managed to avoid a replacement and did 10 years by doing the lifestyle that I have, and managed to put up with just a really arthritic knee, right? Like a bone on bone in 3 compartments.
Painful.
But my life is working around these issues. That's what I do. So we then but then I triggered my inflammation again several years ago at a restaurant by eating a massive oily meal.
I remember reading that.
It went to my knee. I couldn't recover the knee. And the doctor said, this thing it must be replaced. So that's what happened with me. So given that so what's been your experience? When did you have it done? You said
it's about 11 years ago now. Yeah.
How's been your experience with the whole thing?
Well, I mean, same. Leading up to it, it was I lived with the pain for many, many years, and it got to the point we were living in, we're living in Perth at the time, and we would go walking. My daughter was young, and we'd want to go walking on the beach, and I couldn't walk on the beach because I couldn't bend my knee. It was just straight, it was just that bad. I remember at nighttime, because I sleep on my tummy, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd be on my tummy and I'd be like, oh no, knowing that I have to flip over and I'd have to whack my knee back into place because it would just pop out. So the pain was excruciating. So it was getting to a point that I just couldn't function anymore. And so I went and had a knee replacement. I was pretty scared about the whole thing, I'm not going to lie, I don't like being cut open. I don't like, all of that kind of thing. And the experience itself, was quite, scary, but it was fine. But afterwards, the surgeon told me that he thought that I'd probably only last about 5 to 8 years. My knee, I'd since been told that was possibly around 10 years. However, my recovery was really, really good and really quick. And my knee's been amazing since. Like I've not had, and I do put it down to lifestyle now as well, and the foods that we put into our body and things like that. So it's the best thing I ever did, needing to have it done. It gave my quality of life back. So so it's still good. It's still motoring along. My titanium knee. Yeah. So yeah.
And what kind of range of motion are you able to, are you able to reach back and pick up your ankle from behind in a standing position, like a standard kind of quadricep stretch?
I am. Yeah, I am. I've got full range of motion with it. So I guess I'm pretty lucky in that part. They were quite surprised at how quickly I did heal. So I was able to get full range of motion pretty quickly. I do a lot of, exercise and stuff. I keep my body active. So I'm always trying to keep that range of motion going, so that's really an important part of my day-to-day, just to make sure it doesn't seize up and things. So, but no, I do have full range of motion. Yeah.
It's brilliant, isn't it? So I had a similar experience. I was absolutely terrified of getting it done. There was a lot of emotion and worry going through my mind about it.
Yeah.
I felt like, believe it or not, it felt like just a bigger version of when I got my first steroid injection into the knee, because in 2009, I felt like I'd failed, that I hadn't been able to clear every joint in my body of inflammation, because I felt like I'd worked it out what to do. And this is early developing the Paddison Program years.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then the knee was the non-responder. It wouldn't do what every other joint would do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when I got a steroid injection so that I could walk down the aisle, the following week, that felt like a failure. Yet it taught me that sometimes you just need some intervention, because I'd done everything I possibly could.
That's right. Yeah.
And this felt like, failed again. I felt like a part of me had almost failed the image of which I'd created for myself and the life that I lead, to have that done. I thought I was above that.
Yeah.
But the past damage left me in a position where I was just fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was mostly worried about infection, and if this is the area that people need to pay closest attention to about getting any kind of surgical procedure, the risk of infection. And my surgeon was extremely cautious about infection reduction. And so I was scrubbing my body for a whole week of antibacterial skin lotion and up the nose antibiotics, everything, because infections occur mostly with knee joints from the patient's own skin bacteria.
Yeah, right. I didn't know that. Yeah.
It's not from the surgeons. It's not from the surgical room. It's the skin that is on our own, it's our own skin getting into our joint when we are under operation. And that bacteria can lodge onto the prosthesis. And because the prosthesis is artificial, it doesn't have blood supply and it doesn't have the normal white blood cell contact. Yeah. Our body can't fight an infection when it's on a foreign body. Foreign part. Yeah. Anyway, everything went well. My recovery is great. And touch wood, as they say, all going well, just like you. Absolutely sensational.
Yeah.
And for those people who are interested more, I can do maybe you and I can do a whole podcast about knee replacements on another time.
That would be amazing.
But also Gabe Golden, who's did a documentary, Lighting the Path series about rheumatoid arthritis reversal that everyone should watch. Gabe Golden's Lighting the Path.
Okay.
He also had one very similar to me, situation to me, it really can be like the greatest thing.
And I definitely agree. I think I felt that way too. Like I felt like I was even doing the kinesiology on it. I was doing everything that I could. And I think when you just kind of have to just let it be for what it is, and to know that you've done everything you can, and this is just, this is going to give us that quality of life. And the fear around it, like it's just that whole, because you're so vulnerable, aren't you? So you're so vulnerable, and you're putting your faith and trust over to somebody else, and you're not conscious. You don't know what's happening. And don't go YouTubing knee replacements. That's what I did beforehand. I was like, so I was petrified because I kind of knew what was happening. So I just tell people don't do YouTube it before your surgery. But it was the best thing I've ever done. As I said, it gave me that quality of life. I could go walk down on the beach with my daughter again. I could just enjoy life. Life was sunny again, not walking around in that constant mind of pain of, so it was good. It took me a while though, I don't know about you, afterwards, because I had that motor pattern developed that I still limped for many years. I had to get myself out of that. Even though my knee was fully functioning, I still would limp. I still have that real brain connection that I had to work on that for a little while, which was interesting.
I developed problems with my right knee because of the degree of limping that I had been doing leading up to
right. Yeah.
So my limping was so significant leading up to the surgery that my up and down stairs was just awful from a functional point of view. And I developed a ton of tendonitis around the right knee. Now, to the point where it was actually really bothersome, because I was starting to get worried about that right knee. Now, as soon as I started walking again afterwards, and we got off, you push that sort of like walker thing, and you get onto onto like a cane or whatever for just a couple of days. But it's remarkable how quick you get yourself back on track. It's like
that's right.
Within a week or 10 days or something, you're walking around just trying not to bump into anything or get knocked over by a 3-year-old. But besides that, everything's cool. But then as you experienced, I had to get things going again on the right knee. Fortunately, things all worked out. But it's definitely. I just wanted to have that discussion, and I'm really pleased with how it turned out for you. And likewise. Yeah. I don't hear that many bad stories about knee replacements. I really don't.
No, neither do I. I know, quite a few people here. My mum's, a lot of my mum's friends and things are getting, hip knee replacements and things. And the knee replacement seems to be the quicker recovery as well than the hips and things. So, I think it's not as scary as we think. I think once we get over ourselves and the whole idea of it, then, it's if it's needed, it's needed, right? And then you can.
That's exactly right. If you do absolutely everything you possibly can, and you are still walking around, and it's creating pain, it's keeping you up at night. The X-rays show tremendous degradation. Then, as Dr. Nisha Menek, again, to quote her, she said, take advantage of the technology.
That's right.
It's there, and the technology is remarkable. My operation was done under, robotic. It was robotic guided, and because I had specific scans done prior to get a 3-dimensional map of my entire leg, and then they plug it into a computer, and the robot does the whole thing.
Oh God, that's kind of cool and kind of creepy all at the same time.
I know, and my surgeon said they got to within 1 millimeter of the alignment that was originally configured into the. Knocked over my microphone. within 1 millimeter of the position that was intended originally.
Crazy.
I mean, yeah. So that was using. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
My surgeon, when he showed me the X-rays and that, he was just dumb. He couldn't believe that I was functioning with my knee the way that it was. It was just pure bone on bone, and even the bone itself had worn away because I was just, yeah. And I think, I don't know, your pain level, your pain tolerance just kind of after years and years of having this pain, you're like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. You just get so used to living with it, don't you? And then when you don't have it, you're like, my God, this, like, life's amazing. So, yeah.
I got 2 funny stories to share with you. Well, not funny, but like just, to illustrate your point. So one was we had a member inside rheumatoid support who broke her toe and went 6 months before having it checked out and thought, it's just rheumatoid.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, you just put everything down to rheumatoid, don't you? Like, it's just that. Yeah.
That's right.
That's funny.
That's right. So it's like, it's just another excruciating pain. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then likewise, my knee, it was just like a train wreck, right? And it did bone on bone behind the patella and both of the chambers inside. So, but it had been like that. It had been like that for 10 years.
Yeah.
So I'm used to seeing that X-ray, but I meet the surgeon for the first time, and he sort of just nods at me as he walks into a tiny little room after I'd waited for an hour. He had a protege with him, or like someone who was trained.
Oh yeah. Like a student.
Yeah. And so he just looks at the X-ray, and they must have stared at that thing for like 5 to 10 minutes. And the surgeon who's very highly regarded, Florida-based surgeon, right? Where all these knee replacements are at the forefront of the world because it's all rich people and old, and they all just want to get replacements, everything.
Yeah.
And he's just looking at things, and he's like, and see here, this leg doesn't even look like it's the same leg as this other leg, because this one has bone density and this one has totally lost its bone density because he's been limping on this and not weight bearing and all this.
Oh my God.
The 3 chambers here and there's no life left in it. Blah, blah, blah. And then eventually he looks at me, because this whole time he just looked at his associate.
Yeah.
And he just nodded. He just turns around, the most strongest American drawl, and he just goes, "Your knee is shot. You need a new knee," like that. And that was like,
it's so funny. It's so funny.
Your knee is shot.
Well, they initially thought because of my age, they weren't going to give me the knee replacement because I wasn't elderly. I wasn't that. So they thought that I almost, because I went under the public system in Australia, and it was almost like, because I wasn't going to get, so in 10 years' time, they thought I'd have to have another one. So I was almost going to be an expense for them. So I had to plead my case. I had to take my daughter into the appointment and say, look, I'm a mum, stay-at-home mum. And finally, there was one amazing surgeon who he said, yep, okay, I'll do it. And, which was interesting. I was like, well, I think the younger ones would be more like, let's give them more, Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. And the surgeon I saw in Australia, he basically said, look, the guidelines are you try and get to 52 or 54, one of those.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right.
So for me, that was still a while. I'm 46 now. So like that was, going to be a while away. And I'm like, yeah, no worries. Because then we went to the States, and then it all went downhill. And that's when I started seeing surgeons thinking about it. I just saw him because almost like almost got a premonition or something. Like, I'm just going to go and talk to a surgeon and see where my knee's at after 10 years. And then all hell broke loose later. But anyway, look, I was the same deal. And I was concerned because of my age. I said, look, am I going to have this done? And then in 20 years, let's say even 15 to 20 years, I'm going to need it done again. And then because when you have it done the second time, they have to remove some of your own bone tissue.
I know. Yeah.
Which means that really you can only have it done twice.
Yeah. I know.
Because you run out of your own bone.
Yeah.
However, my surgeon, he said, relax. He said, everything's compartmentalized. He said, when it comes time for you to have a revision, which is the technical term, he said, we're just going to go in. we're going to get the polyethylene cartilage equivalent.
Cartilage, yeah.
He says, we'll pop it out, we'll put a new one in, and you'll be good to go.
See, perfect. That's the support you need.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, look, whether or not that will actually happen remains to be seen, because it depends on how the prosthetic, whatever, is sitting, and all that sort of stuff. But look, I think that, you know, if people are curious, go for it. It's It's certainly sounds like great for you, great for me. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, for those people who aren't interested whatsoever in knee replacement discussions, welcome back.
Hi.
we were on your story, but look, that discussion needed to be had, because we haven't talked about it anywhere else, and as people ask me, and then there was an opportunity for us to. So,
for sure. Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you to those who are with us who weren't as in need of that information right now, but it'll be there for you in the future to come back on. You've done the Paddison program. Just tell us the sort of the highlights, the challenges, and the successes of that.
Yes, sure. So I actually stumbled across you probably about 6 years ago now, when I saw your story. And I was still, you know, at that time, still having the anti-inflammatories and still in a lot of pain, trying to manage my pain and all of that kind of carry on. So I saw your program, but I actually sat on it for about a year. I didn't do it straight away. I knew that I needed to do, but I didn't jump into it straight away. I then 5 years ago, my dad passed away. And it was after and going through that emotional grief and that trauma of that, the arthritis in my body just went through the roof. Like, it was just the most pain that I've had ever since I was diagnosed at 15. Like, it was just excruciating. And we were in Perth at the time. And, you know, it's summer in Perth, it gets pretty hot, you know, like 40 plus degrees. And we just had a sweep fan in our bedroom. And so I would sleep with just a sheet on me at night. And it was that bad that I couldn't even lift the sheet off me. Like, the pain down my arms was just excruciating. I couldn't brush my hair. The inflammation in my hands were massive. That sitting on my hands wasn't working, obviously. And I couldn't brush my hair. I couldn't dress myself. My daughter at the time, she was 10. She would have to, you know, dress me and brush my hair. And it was at that point I was like, okay, if I don't do something now, then I am going to be in that wheelchair. You know, that rheumatologist all those years ago, he's going to prove me wrong. You know, I'm going to be in that wheelchair. So I got to your program, and I pretty much right then and there started it. And it was overnight for me. I didn't kind of ease into it. I was like, I've just got to do it. I had that motivation, I guess, of that pain. I was under a doctor at the time, just purely because I wanted to see what my bloods were doing. So I wanted to be able to monitor it. And I didn't really have any challenges as such on your program. Like, I think I was really at that point in my life where it was a no-brainer. You know, I had that motivation. I couldn't, you know, I wasn't able to function. I was, you know, it's even with my emotions, you know, I was angry, I was frustrated, because when you're in pain, you know, it's just all so consuming. I couldn't, you know, and so so with your program, for me, it almost felt like it was home. I don't know. I can't explain it. It was almost like I had someone there that I could trust, that was helping me, I guess. I can't explain it, because I'd been let down so much by the medical system that all of a sudden it was like, here's something that actually resonates with me so powerfully. And then I started, and when I first got my bloods done, that's when they were so high. They've always been so high, the CRP levels. So they were in the 100, just over 100. I started your program, and within 2 months, I think probably around 2 months, I went and had my bloods done again, and my CRP level was down to 3. And the doctor, even at that point, she was like, so I told her what I was doing. I emailed her all your stuff. I emailed your links. I emailed everything. I'm like, you've just got to, you know, you've got to look into this. You've got to see this. And so anyway, so she said, she couldn't believe the results. And she said to me, she goes, so you're just doing this just by nutrition, just by food? And I'm like, well, primarily, yes, I'm eliminating certain foods, but introducing certain foods. But I'm also looking at my mental health. I'm looking at, stresses within my whole, so I'm looking at the whole holistic self, right? And that's what it should be about. And so she was just like, oh, yeah. I mean, she was seeing it black and white in front of you, but still kind of, which was frustrating. And I remember there was one point I was in there, and I mean, her and I got on really well. Like, we had a really good relationship. So, we'd talk about it and I'd tell her what I was doing, and she would probably roll her eyes most of the time, but would have a joke about it. But there was one point she said to me in one of my appointments, she said, oh, my daughter, my friend's daughter has just been diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid at 11. And I said, oh, wow. I said, well, great. Are you letting them know, like, what's what you've seen with the results with what I'm doing with, your program? Have you? And she just said, well, no. My friend's a nurse. She wouldn't want a bar of that. And I was just gobsmacked. And I just said, I couldn't believe it anyway. But anyway, everyone's got their own journey, right? So, no, I just haven't looked back since that. That was 5 years ago now. And I still eat the plant-based diets. I've been like that for the 5 years. And I still go back to your program. I have your, all the recipes. I love loads of the recipes. So if I do have a bit of a reaction to a certain food, if I've been a bit naughty and eaten, what we call the old vegan junk food or anything like that, then I will, I'll go back to the baseline really and just, give myself a good clearing. And normally now, because it's been this long, it will only take me 24 hours and I'm back to where I was. So the pain's short and quick now. So it doesn't stick around, which is good. And it's so empowering. That's what I've found has been the most amazing thing is, when you're given this diagnosis and these scripts and everything, and then feel almost like you hand yourselves over to the people that are there meant to help you, then taking that power back to self and seeing how you can do that for yourself and heal yourself. And, so for me, that empowering was such the motivator as well, which was pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh, beyond cool. Yeah. This is what I call the complete confidence and control state.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're rocking it. You are the puppeteer of your own life and health.
Yeah. You are. Yeah. And you just really get to know your body. Like you can, just even kind of going, oh, yeah, okay, what's that ache and pain? And being able to identify where that's come from and why, and it's just, I mean, I think it's just that in itself, just, even on an emotional level, by having that kind of state of balance emotionally and knowing that you're taking some power back, that I believe is healing on its own level, So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's because you start to, feel this, this word control, you start to feel empowered and these start to, I guess, create these happiness hormones
absolutely
that we know are associated with anti-inflammatory.
And
I guess when we feel out of control, it's a state of fear, isn't it?
It is. And we all know what stress does to the body, right? So it's the stress that will cause the disease. So if we can eliminate that stress at that baseline as well, or not at the baseline, but ensuring that we look at the whole holistic self and not just foods, but also your mental health and everything like that, then that's in itself is, that's where the magic happens, I believe. So,
That puts more clarity around something that I sort of did without much sort of intellect, which was just wanting at the time, again, rewinding to about 2009, 2010, when I found something that worked, I just lived Groundhog Day over and over and over again. And one of the main reasons is because it made me feel like I was safe, just in a safe position. And I felt like if I can do long periods of feeling safe, then there has to be lots of healing going on the inside. So maybe in the future I can eat some lentils, or maybe in the future I can have some white rice. Or, And this feeling of, safeness, security, empowerment. It's all crucial. Right. Absolutely crucial, isn't it?
It is. And I think as well, it's, I don't even say to myself that I'm never going to be able to eat this food again, or I'm never going to be able to do that again. I just stick with, well, today I don't. Today my body likes it this way. And I think if we don't put I found for myself, if I don't put that huge end date or whatever on, then the actual journey's a lot easier. And it's actually, you don't feel like you're missing out. You don't, people they don't so much anymore, but back in the day they would say, don't you miss blue cheese, or don't you miss? And I'd be like, no, because it looks like a wheelchair. And there's no way that I'm going to be taking it. So you change your relationship with the food when you see that the food is healing you, so then it's kind of like, we don't get on. So no, I'm not going to have that blue cheese, but who knows, maybe in a few years, or I might try it. I don't think I will, but it still could be an option. Who knows?
Yeah, I love it. It's like you don't completely categorize yourself as rigid.
No.
You're just making choices that support you.
Yeah.
Choices change.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Dr. McDougall even, I forget what he eats once a year, but he just does it to prove this point emphatically.
Oh, yeah.
I think once a year, I don't want to say anything out of line here, but I believe once a year he eats outside of his recommendations.
Yeah.
And I can't recall the specifics of what that is. It might not be animal products, but it might be like he might eat like a whole bunch of nuts or something, which he doesn't actually recommend. But he does it just to say, look, I eat for optimal health. That's what I do. I'm not typecast as a vegan, or I'm not a plant-based. I just eat for health. And so
that's right.
So tell us about the kinesiology, and how did you get into that? How do you use it on yourself? How do you use it for patients? How can we use it ourselves at home?
Sure. So, kinesiology, I got into that when I was, 16 years ago. So when we were trying to fall pregnant, and I couldn't, we struggled with falling pregnant. So I'd been trying for a year or so. And a friend of mine then said, why don't you go see a kinesiologist? And I had no idea what kinesiology was at that time. But because it was holistic health, I was like, well, I've got nothing to lose. So I went along and saw her. And not only we did fall pregnant, so she helped us fall pregnant, because she not only looked at the physical, because I had a lot of, I was high acidity in my body with the rheumatoid arthritis at the time. So it was due to that was why I was struggling to fall pregnant, was because of the RA. So just through different means and different ways, she was able to, balance out emotional side of things. So pretty much within a short amount of time, we did fall pregnant, which was great. And that's, I kind of was so blown away by how not only physically, but how emotionally and things, that I just felt better. I felt calmer. I felt happier. Life just felt a bit easier. And I'm like, I wanted to learn what she did. I was like, how do you do that? And I wanted to do it just for my friends and family, though. Like, I never had any kind of idea to go out into business or do anything. It was just more that I was just intrigued, and I wanted to be able to help my family and friends. And then, so when we were in Perth, we lived in Perth, and that's where I decided to study. There was a great college in Perth, and O'Neill Kinesiology. And so I studied under them and did, it's a 3-year advanced diploma in kinesiology, which is pretty amazing. The way that it works is the holistic side. So we look at the presenting complaint, whatever it might be, it can be anything, hormonal, digestive, anxiety, structural, any type of presenting complaint that you may have. But we won't just look at the symptom there, because we're not really too worried about the symptom as such. So by using muscle testing, which is our primary tool, we will then identify within your body where you're holding stresses. So those stresses can be physical, emotional, so we look at the whole shebang, really, identify where those stresses are, and then we use kinesiology corrective techniques to balance them out. So that's where the more holistic side comes in. So the whole idea of it is that kinesiology will identify, you tell the kinesiologist through muscle testing, through your own biofeedback, where your stresses are and how you need to heal them. So again, it's all about, being facilitator of the person's healing. So we don't heal the person, or we don't fix the person. We just facilitate that for within the person themselves. So yeah, it's a pretty amazing thing. I mean, I could go on about it for hours. Like, the changes I see, not only myself, but what I've seen in people over the years is just, it's a pretty amazing modality, I must say. Yeah,
and it's quite different to all the other modalities. As you say, it's very self-diagnostic, but you can't. Well, certainly someone who hasn't had the training don't know how to do that self-diagnosis. But when your body, for example, you ask a question and the body just has weakness on that particular, it does send a pretty strong signal to the practitioner that there's something happening there.
It does. And that is identified through that biofeedback. So it's through the muscle state. So if you even imagine if you go and you lift up a really heavy suitcase and you all of a sudden let go of it without actually even registering to go, oh, that's heavy, let it go. That's your biofeedback system kicking in to go, and it goes from your muscle to your brain going, that's heavy, that's stress, let it go. So that's all happened in a matter of a split second. So that's the same thing what we do is we use your muscles to identify stress within the body, and your muscle will change state to identify that biofeedback stress. So the whole time we're talking to your subconscious brain. So your subconscious is where your blueprint is. That's where all your good stuff is and all your emotional traumas, all your experiences. So that's what we access to facilitate the healing, to eliminate that type of stuff. Because this old conscious mind of ours just gets in the way. So we don't want to talk to that one. We want to talk to your subconscious. But yeah, it's and the beautiful thing about it is, I do have a lot of kids that come to see me, and it's been identified as almost like non-talking therapy. So you don't have to talk at all through this session. You can talk as much as you like, you can do what you like, but you don't need to do anything because your body is telling the practitioner through the muscle. So it's really effective for kids, especially for anxiety and things like that, which is great, which I love to see, love to see that. But yeah, so it's pretty cool.
My only experience with kinesiology was when I was doing food sensitivity tests. Back, this is again in that era of sort of 2007 to 2009, looking for any insights I could gain around foods that were going to be helpful, not helpful, and of course in this exploratory years, we were testing different meats and all sorts of processed, processed snacks and all sorts of stuff because this was really sort of new territory. And so, yes, and the process was to raise my arm up and then to ask me a question and then apply pressure to my arm, and my ability to resist that consistently applied pressure indicated sort of my subconscious connection with those foods and so on. So I just wanted to share that in case people were wondering what actually happens. It's just basically, you're getting applied pressure from the practitioner onto an arm, for example, and then your ability to resist that pressure indicates your response to condition.
Yeah, and I do a lot of nutritional testing with people who are wanting to see a lot of sensitivities, food sensitivities as well as intolerances. And we do, as you say, we use muscle testing to identify what may stress your body out, or what is okay for your body. I guess from where I've been trained, the level up from that then I want to identify which organ it's stressing out. So whether it's your stomach, your small intestine, your large intestine, or wherever in your body, also your brain. And then we go on to finding out where those stresses are located. And then we want to facilitate the healing of that. So the whole idea is this: you might be intolerant to it now, but let's look at, sessions over time, including the emotional components that you may have, to get you to a point where you can have that food. It's no longer a sensitivity. So, you get the information, which is great, but then we want to do something with that information and we want to facilitate that healing. So,
what's the name of your practice?
Kinesiology.co.nz is my website.
Oh, so, what a URL, kinesiology.co.nz. That's the sort of the New Zealand equivalent of like kinesiology.com.
.com.au, or .au. Yeah, I know. It was weird because I just kind of moving back to New Zealand because I've only been back here the last 5 years, and I rebranded and everything. And when I went to that URL, I was like, I cannot believe that that's actually still available. But which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Back in the day, I had clint.com.au. Which was fun. And on my number plate was just Clint on my car, and I had that for 10 years.
Oh, cool.
And I got sick of people driving by me drunk on a Saturday night, and then they'd wind down the window and say, "Hey, Clint," and I would turn. I think must be a buddy of mine, and it was just some.
That's so funny.
Who'd seen my number plate and wanted to have some fun. That used to happen. Once every 1 or 2 weeks, I'd get someone yell out Clint to me as they drive by.
Well, do you know what, Clint? I'd be yelling out to you too. I mean, you can't let that go past without yelling out. Especially if you get a few wines or something. Yeah.
So when we traded in the car to get something that was could fit a baby, because it was a 2-door, I actually declined to keep the plates. I said, I didn't want it anymore. I don't want people yelling at me when I'm a father with a kid in the back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then the clint.com.au, an IT friend of mine was managing that URL, and I couldn't get a hold of him, and the thing didn't renew. Like he didn't renew it for me, and I lost access to it. So not that I want that anymore either.
Yeah.
We had a guest who's a very, very much loved member. We had a guest on our podcast who's also a much loved member of Rheumatoid Support, whose name is Carrie. And she's a wonderful lady who also had a lot of kidney trouble. Now, she almost had she was down to 30% functionality on her kidneys.
Wow.
Which after doing our program, then she got back up into the 60%, and she's been able to have good quality kidney health ever since.
Great.
With that, I wanted to ask how your kidneys are, given that this was an issue that you experienced back in your 2020s. Yeah,
so
how are they?
That's fine. Absolutely fine. I mean, I actually, probably within 6 months, they were improving. And then they're fine now, full functioning. I get bloods. It was so interesting. And even my iron levels as well had always been low. And after my second lot of blood tests, my iron levels went through the roof, went a lot high, and they thought they had hematochromatosis. But when I went and had them again, they were normal. And it was almost same with my kidneys and things, that the body just wasn't, it was healing itself and it wasn't stressed out. So my body just started functioning properly. And my levels, ever since I'll get bloods every year, I'll get my bloods done. And I've just had them done recently as well. And all my levels are perfectly fine. I don't have, I've still got the RA. Obviously, I still have the disease, which, want to get rid of it, but I've heard that's a bit tricky to actually get rid of it. But so I still have that. But all my other levels are fine. Kidneys fine, liver's fine. I'm fine.
Tremendous. Well, that was the last question I had for you. Thank you so much for everything that you've shared. We spent some time on the knee replacement. I hope that's valuable to people. We covered your backstory. We talked about the methotrexate. We talked about, kinesiology. We talked about how, we still need to be careful of these food sensitivities and emotional sensitivities. And so, it's about now not getting complacent, and it's about just, keeping up the things that have gotten you to this place, and to just continue to roll them out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So thank you. It's been a pleasure to meet you, and well done for all that you've done with your health, and sounds like your business is going well. So,
it's good. Great. Well, that's great. Well, thanks for having me, Clint. It's pretty, I'm very honored to be on your podcast, I must say. So thanks for having me.